Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Lost in Translation. My name is Nico, and this time we are taking a look at the Torah portion of Mattot and the 10 things that you will miss if you're only reading the portion in English. We're going to start with number one, vows. Okay, so now we have a slightly different formula. Vaydiber Moshe el Moshe HaMatot, right? That now instead of Hashem speaking to Moshe, we have Moshe who knows he's going to die. He is now speaking to the heads of the tribes, and the first thing that they're talking about is that if somebody makes a vow, and he's making a vow to limit himself or to require himself to do something, right? Well, this is quite interesting here that we're being told that whatever came out of his mouth he shall do. So this places a great responsibility upon ourselves to be careful about what we say, how we say it, that our words have meaning and power, that our words have consequences, right? And this is unique among humans. Of course, humans are the only creatures that we know of that have advanced speech communication, advanced speech communication with complex grammar and reasoning functions, right? Um, that's not to say that other animals don't communicate vocally or verbally, but humans are the ones that have this capacity for abstract communication, and this puts us kind of this puts us in a closer relationship with our creator. And so here we're learning that our words have this similar power as the creator's words. When he spoke, creation came into being. When we speak, we have an effect on creation. So this is a tremendous power. And right away, once we have this condition described to us, the very next thing that we see is how this power is limited amongst women and young people, right? Who may not completely understand the extent of that power. Now, that's not to say that women don't understand that their words have meaning and power, but you know, here, if we're going to have a hierarchy in in a household, right, that when somebody speaks and they're going to say something that will have an effect upon their life and the lives of those around them, well, here we give an opportunity for a father or a husband to cancel the oaths or the vows that somebody in their household might make. And one reason that they might do this is because that vow may place a hardship on the entire family, right? So there are a lot of rules about how to deal with this. In fact, many times fathers are, we have a consideration that a father shouldn't um, eliminate a vow that is limited in a time aspect in order to teach children not to take vows lightly, right? To say, no, no, you made a vow here, you have to complete this, even though the child might not want to. Anyway, it's one of these very interesting parts of the Torah where, again, our similarity to the Creator is clearly established. Number two, take vengeance. So immediately after we've taken this pause to consider the ramifications of vows and oaths, we go back to this situation with Midian and the issue of Baal Peor, right? And here we have Hashem speaking to Moshe, and he's telling him to avenge yourselves or to take revenge for the children of Israel against the Midianites. After, right? And right after this, Moshe says to the people to carry out the revenge of the Lord. He doesn't say we're going to take revenge for ourselves. We're going to take revenge for Hashem, right? So, okay, it's it's um it's interesting here. What is this vengeance? What is okay? We know that the Midianites participated in this conspiracy with Moab to to reduce the status of Israel, and their actions brought about this plague. And this kind of seems like a betrayal, considering how much Israel was not dependent upon, but the earlier relationship between Israel and Midian during the years in the wilderness, and even fact that Moshe Rabbeinu is married to a Midianite. Um, okay, we assume that that family converted, or but besides the idea of there being historicity to this narrative, understanding the relationships between these peoples in these places, we now have a people that there was closeness with, and that closeness is broken by the fact that one people tried to take Israel away from its mission, and now there's a vengeance. And it's interesting that the perspective from Hashem is the vengeance needs to be uh, for the children of Israel, right? This desire to go straight to the Creator. But from the perspective of Moshe to the people, that they need to focus because they are Israel, because they are straight to the Creator. They need to be focused on this action for the Creator and not themselves. Because anything we do for ourselves is a separation from the Creator. And anything that we do for the sake of somebody else or for the sake of the Creator binds us more closely to that Creator. And this is why Moshe Rabbeinu changes the perspective on why the vengeance needs to take place. So whether the action is a kind action of mercy, or a an action of judgment, no matter what we're doing, we should be focusing the ultimate intention behind that action for the benefit of our maker. Number three, gathered unto your people. Right at the same time that Moshe Rabbeinu is being commanded about this issue of vengeance against the Midianites, he's being told, afterwards you'll be gathered to your people. Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron, the high priest, and now Moshe, the prophet, the great teacher. He knows what this means. He knows that this is the final act that he will commit as the leader of the children of Israel. That when this war is over, his time is finished, and he doesn't hesitate. It's like this chain of command. in a on a naval vessel or on any kind of military crew where the commander says and the second officer or the first officer relays the order, and that's it. There is no hesitation. There's nothing else except for relaying the commandment forward and moving to accomplish the commandment that's been given. And this we've seen in other stories how a commandment's been given and the protagonist rushes to accomplish this commandment. And that's how we should be with the commandments as well, regardless of the consequences. That if we know that this is the last time we're going to celebrate Shabbat, we should be enthusiastic about this last Shabbat. Um, if we know that we might face consequences for whatever it is that the mitzvah is in the moment, well, okay, we don't need to unnecessarily risk our lives. That's forbidden from us. But we should be as enthusiastic about carrying out the commandments as Moshe Rabbeinu demonstrates even right here, right at the very end of his life, that even though this is the last command that he's going to receive, he runs to accomplish this commandment for the Creator. And it gives us yet another example of what our relationship with the Creator through the commandments should be. Number 4, word delivered. Okay, there's a slight description in the translation between the Art Scroll and the Chabad translation here, and it's a telling one, right? That okay, we're being told that 1,000 members, 1,000 warriors from each tribe. So we're only talking about an army of 12,000 people who are being sent against the nation of Midian. And so from the thousands of Israel, 1,000 was given over from each tribe. Right here in the Art Scroll, it says, "So there were delivered from the thousands of Israel, the thousands of the children of Israel, 1,000 from each tribe," right? Well, given, delivered is maybe bet or sent, because if we look here, this is a lot like yeah, a delivering, a giving over. It implies that these 1,000 people from each tribe, these 12,000 men, were not enthusiastic about the job, not because they didn't want to go to war, but because they understood that once this war was accomplished, their their master, their teacher, their leader, Moshe Rabbeinu, was going to die, and so of course they wanted to perform the commandment, but they must have had this sense of compassion for Moshe Rabbeinu and even maybe foreboding for their own future without him. Number 5, killed by the sword. Okay, these 12,000 men go out and they attack Midian as the Lord commanded Moshe, and they killed every male, right? So any attachment that Midian had to this idea of bestowal, the head of the nation is put to death, right? And the Midian kings are slain, and so is Balaam, the son of Beor, the prophet of the nations that Balak called to curse Israel, he is killed, or they slew with the sword, that he was killed by the sword. Now, or with the sword. This is very important, right? That the sword is not something that is necessarily the quality of the nation of Israel, right? If we look at, the sword belongs to Esav, and speech belongs to Yaakov, or Israel. In fact, we saw at the beginning of this portion how important speech is and how important our vows are, right? The power of the nation of Israel is our power of speech. That's what connects us to Hashem. But because Balaam tried to usurp that power and use his speech against Israel, Israel now uses the quality of the nations to punish Balaam, right? So this inversion, this attempted inversion on the part of the nations of the world, of Balaam, causes an inverse punishment from the nation of Israel to be handed out to them. Number 6, did you allow the females to live? All right. Well, this is looking pretty harsh here. I mean, we have the war, we have all the men killed, we have all the cities and palaces or castles are burnt. The army takes off with all the wealth and plunder and animals, and they bring back a bunch of captives, all the women, right? And Moshe Rabbeinu and Elazar the Cohen, they come out with all the princes of the community of the nation, go out, and they see that the army has come back with all these captives and and all this wealth. And so now Moshe Rabbeinu is angry that they allowed the women to survive. Why? Because they were instrumental in the incident of Peor, wide open, right? They were the ones that participated in the attempt to sever Israel from their intended purpose, right? Okay. He then commands that any woman who is old enough to know a man is killed, and they only keep the small girls that are now captives of Israel. Okay, wow. We can try to talk about, how in the Bronze Age, taking these women as captives might have been justified as an act of mercy so as not to kill everybody in the entire nation. I mean, we understand that they're going to be slaves, which, you know, isn't justifiable by our modern morality. But again, if we look at what's happening here in terms of spiritual quality, right? What males are and what females are, it starts to have a different look to it, right? That the female represents the vessels of reception, while the male represents the vessels of bestowal. We know that Midian, through its actions against Israel, has separated itself from the Creator. That's why it dies. That's why that's why the male part is put to death. And now you have the vessels of reception that have been taken captive, that have been assumed by Israel. So there's a new head, there's a new male aspect being placed over the top of these desires to receive. But Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us that no, these desires to receive are going to take you away from Hashem. Those desires to receive must be put to death. Only the smallest of these desires can be used properly in order to accomplish connection to the Creator. That if we try to reactivate that part of reception that drew us away from the Creator at Bel Peor, that those vessels of reception will separate us from the Creator in the future. So they have to be put to death. Now, we put to death desires all the time, right? Or at least those of us who recognize that there's a problem with the desire. Say a person who enjoys smoking, they put that desire to death if they quit smoking. Now, do they feel the desire to smoke in the future? Yeah, sometimes they feel a desire for nicotine. But later on, the longer they go without smoking, the more and more disgusting smoking becomes to them. That desire is completely eliminated from their being. It is put to death. So the Torah here, again, is talking about spirituality. It's talking about those desires that take us away from Hashem and how we need to identify them and eliminate the ones that will certainly take us away from Hashem, and only work with those desires that are within our capacity to transform with the intention to bestow. Number 7, pass through the fire. Okay, now we're dealing with all this wealth, all this booty, plunder that the army has taken. So again, we're looking at vessels, tools that are still considered useful, right, for the spiritual advancement of Israel, right? And we're seeing that these materials that are of use have to pass through fire for purification. And this is again, if we remember what purification is about removing the the qualities that distance us from the Creator. So these vessels came from another nation, and that nation had separated itself from the Creator. And now we want to make use of these vessels in a way that 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 helps us with our mission of connecting to the Creator. And we have to get rid of the impurity, the part of it that will take us away. So again, we don't want to be connected to silver and gold because it's silver and gold. I want it. I want to use this silver and gold and copper and iron and tin and lead and all this useful stuff because it should help Israel connect to the Creator, right? Now, in order to do that, it goes through a purification process. And we see that it goes through fire and then goes through water. And this passage is actually where we get our Kesherim laws from, right? So, you know, Passover comes along and it's time to clean the kitchen and put everything that we use through boiling water and to purge it and get and remove any flour or chametz from it through this process. right? Or we just put it all away and we take out disposable items for the week. I mean, these laws of purification have taught us how to kesher the vessels that we use in our daily lives. And we use this practice of keshering again to remind us that, that anything that we use in our lives, which are supposed, our whole life is supposed to be an effort of connection to the Creator. So anything that we use during our life should be dedicated to that pursuit. And that is what the what purification is about. So before these items can be distributed to the nation, they have to be severed from their previous use. They go through fire and water to be purified. Number 8, calculate the spoils. Okay, again, a slight variation, either the same mean. Take account of the plunder, calculate the spoils of the captive people, the animals together, and we're going to divide equally between the warriors who went out to battle and the entire congregation. So half of it goes to the 12,000, and the other half of it goes to the rest of the nation of Israel. And even amongst those two halves, both sides are going to offer up tenths to the priests and the Levites, right? So there is this division. We're not going to give all the reward to the 12,000 men who are selected to go accomplish this task, but we as a nation are going to benefit. These things are going to be these vessels, this plunder, these things that have been assumed from the nation of Midian need to be a benefit to the entire nation of Israel, right? And what's really interesting here is we start to see exactly, right? Okay, so half is to give to Elazar the Cohen as a gift to the Lord, right? So again, there's a lot of wealth that's been assumed here, and immediately they're giving up half of it to the priests, right? Because we don't want to be connected to the material, to the stuff. Even in our own spiritual power, in our own spiritual accomplishments, it's not really our accomplishments. We need to disassociate ourselves from even our own accomplishment in spirituality. We need to understand that victory comes from Hashem, that our accomplishments come from Hashem, and we need to use what's appropriate for ourselves to use to draw closer. And we need to tame that egoism that's still a part of us, even in spiritual pursuits. Now, what's really interesting is that we start counting the different items, and we see the offerings that were given to back to Hashem, right? And so here we go. So we see here that all of those who are allowed to live, only the young girls, only these smallest of vessels of reception, 32,000 were captured and distributed, half to the priests and half to the people. And these 32,000 more than make up for the 24,000 of Israel that were killed in the plague after the incident of Baal Peor. Okay, this is essentially the essence of our vengeance here. That those who are lost were more than replaced. They were also replaced with all female aspect. So in the end, the even though there was this death amongst Israel, which was probably all associated with men who would have participated in the incident of Baal Peor, right? That we had a loss of reset of this of the capacity to bestow, but here we have an increase in our capacity to receive, right? So again, if we take a look at what's happening amongst the numbers and the names and understanding that Torah is talking about spirituality, not people, not battles, not events in history, but things that we experience within ourselves, we see that egoism grows as we go through spirituality, and we need to temper that egoism as we go forward, and that's why 16,000 of those people go to the priests, go right to Hashem, and the other 16,000 remain within the nation. So this way we see that the egoism increases, but we dedicate more of it to our efforts for connection to Hashem. Number 9, not a man of us is missing. Okay, so what's happening here is that the soldiers who went out to fight, they made a census, they counted all the men, and not one man was missing from us. Not a man of us was missing, depending on your translation. It's the same. Right? We're using this term ish, not adam. So ish is right. We see also it's connected to esh, fire, right? That these uh, these vessels pass through fire as well. Um, just like the captives had to pass through these men that eliminated the impure from the pure. Okay, and that none of these people were lost, none of these men were lost in the effort, right? That when we purify, this is what we're learning here, that when we act to purify, our efforts are not lost, that we that the things that we do to come closer to Hashem will not cost us, but in the end, it will always enrich us. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily material wealth, but spiritual effort always brings spiritual reward. And now that they've realized that, they wanted to offer even more of that reward back to the Lord, right? Back to Hashem, right? So they made a specific gift of things made of gold, right? Rings, earrings, some sort of jewelry, something that gives splendor to the body. They gave that splendor back to Hashem when they realized that their efforts were completely fruitful without any loss. So there was only gain in this situation. And so all of these articles are taken and they're dedicated to Hashem, and we see that they are dedicated in weights of shekel, right? This, which gets us back to this idea of perfection again. Number 10, abundant livestock. Okay, so we've got Reuben and Gad, these two tribes who have a lot of cattle, right? We've known them throughout the whole time to have a lot of cattle. They are connected to the animal level of desire. We're not talking about animal desire. There's this hierarchy of inanimate, vegetative, animate, human, right? So there's this part of the desire of Israel straight to the creator, which is connected to this animate or animal level of desire. And they see that this land just outside of Israel is good for their place. And this causes a bit of a controversy because now Moshe is saying, listen, we had this problem 40 years ago. People came back from a mission into the land and discouraged Israel from going in, and we were punished. We had to walk in the wilderness for 40 years. You're doing exactly what your fathers did. You're discouraging the rest of the nation from going forward. And in order to to overcome that problem, these people or these tribes promise to be at the forefront of the conquest of Israel, of the land of Israel, right? So, what does that mean in terms of spirituality? It means that, okay, again, we have these lower levels of desire that need to be dedicated to spirituality, right? That that the conquest of the land, Aretz Ratzon, right, for Yeshar Kel, Israel, that needs to be above all other considerations. That even the lower levels of desire, whether it's animate, vegetative, or inanimate, they have to be dedicated to that effort, and that all that force goes uh, into the spiritual efforts, and only after that they're able to take their place, right? So we know that their vessels of reception, their women and children, stay in these fortified cities in their place with their livestock, and the men, the vessels of bestowal, are dedicated to the spiritual advancement of the entire nation. And that's how this controversy is overcome. And at this point, the nation stands on the fields of Moab, ready to cross the Jericho, and we prepare ourselves for Moshe Rabbeinu's final acts as leader of the nation. So I hope that's been interesting and helpful. Um, those were the 10 things that I found that were important for considering through the lens of things lost in translation. Share with me anything that you find as well. It's again a very rich portion. I invite you to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, be well.